the neon-lit chaos of disco, I stumbled, intoxicated by a mixture of spirits and laughter. The dance floor pulsed with life, and my friends reveled beside me. But as the night wore on, I found myself alone, my sense of direction blurred by the alcohol coursing through my veins. Desperation urged me to reach home safely, so I went for my phone and dialed an Uber. The app confirmed a nearby driver, and I waited eagerly, praying for a quick escape from the sensory overload. A dark sedan pulled up to the curb. The driver's face was obscured by the shadows, but I hesitated. Something about him seemed off. Nevertheless, I was too drunk and anxious to care. I stumbled into the back seat, and the man's eyes lingered on me a moment too long. "Home," I slurred, trying to sound assertive. He nodded, but his silence was unnerving. As the car pulled away, he started asking questions about my evening, my friends, and where I was headed. Anxiety gnawed at me, but I answered as briefly as possible. I reminded him I was in a hurry and my friend waiting for me at our place. Ignoring my pleas, he muttered, "I need a smoke," and abruptly pulled into a dimly lit alley. Panic surged as he lit a cigarette. I protested, but he dismissed my pleas with a condescending chuckle. Minutes passed like hours as he smoked, leaving me trapped in the car. When he finally extinguished the cigarette, he resumed driving. But it was clear he wasn't going in the right direction. He missed the turn to my place more than once. Dread washed over me as I questioned whether I had given him the correct address in my inebriated state. "Are we going the right way?" I finally asked, my voice trembling. He turned to me, and his smile was as unsettling as the shadows that concealed his features. It sent shivers down my spine. "Don't worry," he whispered. As he continued to drive aimlessly, my heart pounded in my chest. Tears welled in my eyes as I realized I was in a perilous situation. The streets outside were unfamiliar, and I was entirely at his mercy. Desperation took hold as I reached for the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through me as I struggled to open the door, tears streaming down my face. I begged him to release me. He turned again, his smile growing even more comprehensive. It was a malevolent grin that etched fear into my very soul. Finally, he unlocked the door. I wasted no time. I flung it open, stumbling out into the cold, unforgiving night. As I fled from the car, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. He was still smiling, watching me as I ran into the darkness. The streetlights cast eerie shadows on his face, and the look in his eyes was one of twisted satisfaction. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of a well-lit gas station. Tears and fear consumed me as I called the police, recounting my horrific journey. They arrived swiftly, and the search for the mysterious Uber driver began. To this day, I shudder at the thought of what might have transpired had I not escaped that car. The true horror lay not in supernatural events or ghosts, but in the chilling reality that some nightmares are woven from the threads of everyday life, lurking just beyond the glow of the neon lights. In the following weeks, I cooperated with the police in every way I could, providing a detailed description of the driver and the car. But despite their efforts, the driver remained elusive, like a shadow in the night. The incident left me with lingering trauma. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, the sense that he might return to finish whatever sinister plan he had in mind that fateful night. I became wary of accepting rides from strangers and more vigilant in ensuring my safety. As the months passed, news of similar incidents began to emerge. Other women shared harrowing experiences involving a suspicious Uber driver who smoked, asked intrusive questions, and took them on terrifying detours. The descriptions of the man matched my own encounter, leaving no doubt that he was a dangerous predator. The authorities intensified their efforts to catch this sinister driver, but he remained elusive, always one step ahead. It became clear that he was not just a random occurrence, but a calculated threat preying on vulnerable individuals. My story and those of other survivors shed light on the dark underbelly of the ride-sharing world. It prompted changes in safety measures and stricter regulations within the industry, making it harder for individuals with malicious intentions to exploit it. Despite the lingering fear, I found solace in knowing that by sharing my ordeal, I had contributed to the safety of countless others. It was a sobering reminder that even in the absence of supernatural horrors, The terrors of the natural world could be just as chilling. That survival often hinged on our ability to escape the clutches of darkness. The night was a shroud of impenetrable darkness as I stumbled out of the throbbing heart of the club, a swirling cocktail of disorientation and inebriation clouding my senses. My husband had been caught up in some last-minute work, and he had strongly advised that I take an Uber home. Ordering the ride, I stood on the dimly lit street corner, yearning for a safe and uneventful journey back to our apartment. As the sleek black car pulled up, I slipped into the back seat. My senses immediately tingled with unease as I felt the piercing gaze of the driver through the rearview mirror. An unsettling grin twisted on his lips, and he broke the silence with a chillingly personal question. "Do you have a boyfriend?" Taken aback by the abrupt inquiry, I replied, "That's none of your business," hoping my response would serve as a barrier between my personal life and his prying eyes. However, he was undeterred, and his questions grew increasingly invasive. "How old are you?" he probed, his voice dripping with unsettling curiosity. Opting to remain guarded, I replied with caution, "I'd rather not say," feeling a growing unease wash over me. His chuckle was anything but reassuring. It sent shivers racing down my spine. "You're a beautiful woman," he commented, his words now carrying a predatory undertone. "Would you like to stop for a coffee with me? Somewhere more private?" Dread filled the car as I declined his offer with urgency, my heart pounding. "No, I just want to go home and get some sleep." His demeanor shifted abruptly, his voice laced with anger. "Why not? I'm a nice guy," he growled, his grip on the steering wheel tightening ominously. "You should say yes." Panic surged as he started to drive erratically, taking turns that led us farther away from my intended destination. Desperation overcame me, and I reached for the door handle, but it refused to budge. The doors were locked and I was trapped. Minutes dragged on like hours, and the driver continued to take me further from my home. My panic intensified, and I knew I needed to call for help. My trembling hands fumbled for my phone, and I attempted to dial my husband, praying that he would pick up and save me from this nightmare. As I pulled my phone from my purse, the driver snatched it from my hand. His eyes bore into mine as he added his own number to my contacts and deleted my husband's. He said with a sinister smile, "I'm your husband now. Yours left you alone with another man." I was rendered speechless by his audacity, unable to grasp the gravity of the nightmare that was unfolding around me. In a quivering voice, I managed to say, "Okay, we can meet tomorrow and have coffee," just hoping to escape from his clutches. He appeared satisfied with my response and, finally, returned me to my doorstep. As he unlocked the car doors, I could feel his menacing gaze lingering on me. I stumbled out of the vehicle, my legs still trembling, and watched him speed away into the darkness. Inside my home, I locked the door and I remember my husband's phone number, so I quickly called him, recounting the horrifying experience I had just endured. He rushed home, and together we contacted the police to report the sinister Uber driver. The memory of his menacing gaze continued to haunt me, and I couldn't shake the feeling of vulnerability and fear. The police launched an investigation, uncovering a chilling pattern of similar incidents involving this driver. Women from various walks of life had fallen prey to his sinister intentions. It became painfully clear that he was a dangerous predator, exploiting his role as an Uber driver to target and terrorize his vulnerable passengers. Despite the police's best efforts, the driver remained elusive, always one step ahead. It was a stark reminder that danger could lurk in the most unsuspecting places, even within the confines of a trusted ride-sharing service. The day had been a relentless storm of errands, appointments, and the relentless pace of life in the city. Exhausted and eager to return home, I ordered an Uber with the hope of a quiet, uneventful ride. Little did I know, my world was about to plunge into an abyss of horror. As I settled into the back seat, the driver, a middle-aged man with a disarming smile, greeted me warmly. His polite demeanor calmed my frayed nerves, and for a moment, I felt at ease. I exchanged pleasantries and shared my destination, believing this would be like any other Uber ride. But as we started to pull away from the curb, The driver turned to me and said, "I hope you had a successful shopping trip today." The blood in my veins ran cold. I had never mentioned where I had been, let alone the purpose of my outing. I glanced at the rearview mirror, trying to decipher the source of his unnerving knowledge. "How did you know I went shopping?" I stammered, my heart pounding in my chest. He chuckled softly, a sound that sent chills down my spine. "I have my ways of knowing things," he replied cryptically. Fear began to gnaw at the edges of my composure, but I rationalized that perhaps it was a lucky guess. I could be overreacting, I thought. However, as the ride continued, the driver's knowledge about my life became increasingly specific and unnerving. He recounted my entire day, from my morning yoga class to the coffee shop where I'd met a friend, even the precise amount I had spent on lunch. How could he possibly know all this? Anxiety clawed at my chest as I tried to engage in small talk, hoping to uncover any clue as to how he had acquired this information. But he remained evasive, providing no explanation for his unnerving insights. The more he spoke, the more I felt like a helpless mouse in a trap. The ride seemed to stretch on endlessly, and my surroundings began to blur into an indistinct nightmare. The driver's unsettling knowledge became a relentless barrage of my deepest, most private details. He mentioned the people I had interacted with during the day, the contents of my texts and emails, and even the thoughts I had while sitting alone in a coffee shop. Desperation welled up within me, and I fumbled for my phone to dial 911. But as I tried to make the call, he turned to me with a sinister smile, his voice dripping with malice. "Who are you calling, my dear?" he asked. "You won't find help. You're trapped with me." Terror surged through my veins as I realized he had locked the car doors, leaving me helpless and at his mercy. The driver's words echoed in my mind, "You're trapped with me." I was held captive in this moving prison, a pawn in his horrifying game. With no way to escape, I began to piece together the dreadful truth. This man had been watching me, tracking my every move, and now he had me at his mercy. The feeling of being stripped of my privacy, my autonomy, and my safety was suffocating. Time became an agonizing blur as the driver continued to reveal intimate, personal details about my life. He recounted memories I had long buried, secrets I had confided only to my closest friends, and dreams I had never shared with anyone. It was as if he had become a nightmarish extension of my own mind, a repository of my deepest fears and desires. I pleaded with him to stop, to release me from this nightmare, but he only smiled and continued to invade my privacy. There was no escape from this relentless stalker who had taken my life and twisted it into a grotesque living horror story. Finally, the car came to a stop. My heart raced as I realized I had reached my destination. The driver unlocked the doors and I stumbled out, my legs shaky and my mind in turmoil. I looked back at the car, and the driver met my gaze with that same chilling smile, promising that he would always be watching. As I walked away, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. It read, "I'll be with you, always." The horror of that Uber ride would remain with me forever, a constant reminder that in the darkest corners of the world, there are those who will stop at nothing to invade our most private sanctuaries. I was left with a haunting sense of violation, a profound fear that the stalker driver would always be lurking in the shadows, watching and waiting.